everyone. Come on in because we are here, y'all, for the Married at First Sight, Season 18. We are here for the after party with Keisha and I Pulliam. I got a chance finally to watch the after party, and on the after party this week, it was a two-parter. The first part was Michelle was on there, so was Camille. And then the second part, we had Juan and MM. And on both parts, we had an astrologer on there. We had an astrologer on there, y'all. So she gave us a little bit of tips. And you would think that Juan had a problem with the astrologer, right? Wrong. Boy, oh boy. There was so much going on in this after party. But the one thing I want to point out the most is what my backdrop says, and that is backstabbers. Backstabbers. Y'all, come on now. We knew that David and Madison were liars and cheaters. But did y'all know they were backstabbers too? There's some stories told on this after party of how the two of these people basically were chummying up with Michelle and Allan and then going back and forth and telling each other about what Michelle and Allan might have said to each other. We talking about backstabbing, y'all. This is a whole nother level. This is another level. You know, the more I think about this, the more I talk about how Madison was the mastermind. I just did a review on it. She's the mastermind. And if you guys go back to my early review when I started talking about all the trauma that all these couples were bringing into these marriages, all of them. I broke everyone's trauma down. So if you didn't watch, go back and look at it. But if you guys remember, you will remember that my trauma I said David had. The trauma I said he had was that he went through a lot of rejection in his childhood from white women. David was a Puerto Rican, a man of color, growing up in a predominantly maybe white neighborhood, or he went to a white school. Let's just say that. His school wasn't very diverse. Wasn't no DEI back then. Wasn't no DEI David school. And so David said that he got a lot of rejection from women at that time, girls in his school. Remember, white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired women rejected him a lot. And what I said David's trauma was about was he was in his adult year. He was trying to prove that he's good enough to all these white women with blonde hair and blue-eyed. He was reliving it. He's trying to heal an old wound. He was trying to heal an old wound through the women he chooses. Now, if you didn't believe me then, I know you believe me now, because what happened, what really played out in this whole entire season was that David, they paired him with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, and guess what? She triggered his trauma again. She rejected him. That's what I was saying earlier in my videos. She triggered him. The very pain that he didn't want to experience. He was looking for acceptance coming on here, and he was rejected by Michelle. He was prime for the picking for Madison because David, remember, has a trauma. He's trying to heal it. So when I said before how quickly David pivoted from Michelle, now you understand. You combine his quickness to pivot to the blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman that wanted him. He left Michelle so fast. There was no trying in that marriage. He left her so fast because the minute he felt rejection, he didn't endure he was not long suffering, y'all. I hate to tell you people who you want to keep saying David was long suffering. This doesn't excuse Michelle. I've had enough heat from Michelle, but I want to tell you David was not long suffering because the minute David was rejected by that blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, and here came along Madison, as he has told us over and over again, was asking me questions and finding interest in me that my wife wasn't. It didn't take much for David to go on over there to Madison because he wanted to get his trauma healed. He wanted to be accepted. So that's where he landed. But we got so much to talk about, y'all. I want to get into what the really backstabbing was all about. But before I do that, I got to play my intro video. Make sure you guys subscribe, like the video, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to leave a comment down below. And I'll see you in a minute after I play my intro. Well, we are back, y'all. We are back to talk about more of this drama that has unfolded with the backstabbers. Before we get started, let me dedicate something. What they do, they shine in your face. All the time they want to take the praise from backstabbers. Backstabbers. There you go. There it is right there. That's what I'm calling David and Madison, backstabbers. Because it's just not about that they lied and they cheated. They befriended these people. Michelle confided in Madison. Madison befriended Michelle to hear all of Michelle's grievances so she could go back, tell David everything Michelle was saying, and then also use the information to heal those wounds of David that he knew that Michelle uncovered. You see, Michelle uncovered the trauma. Michelle uncovered the wounds of wanting to be accepted by a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. That was the only criteria. She uncovered it from the very beginning. That's when she told him, is that your only criteria, that she be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman? She uncovered it. And what she did was she confided that into Madison and said, you know what, David, he's so shallow. He's so shallow. All he really wants is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman. And that's when Madison got in her head, really? That's all it's going to take to snag this man from you? And there, from the very beginning, that's when it all started. It all started in Mexico. Tacos, tacos, tacos. But on this after party, we had a young lady on here. Her name was Elliot. She was an astrologer. And she's also a clinical social worker. And she says she uses astrology as a tool for growth and helping in relationships. And Keisha and I Pulliam said, well, we need you because folks has been showing out this season, really showing out. And Michelle said her intention this last episode was get to the bottom. She really wanted to get to the bottom of things. And Camille said, well, while Michelle was getting to the bottom of things, me and Thomas, we was up there sleeping in the room. Thomas and Camille were asleep in the room. The old married couple was sleeping in the room. It's almost like the old parents go to bed early at 8 o'clock and the kids stay up late at night. And then you wake up the next morning and say, hey, what time did y'all stay up? Ooh, mama, we was up to like 3 o'clock in the morning, but did you hear us? Do you know what went on last night? That is Camille and Thomas. They would sleep up in their room. They said they even fell asleep with their mics on. They were so knocked out. And all along, the kids was cutting up downstairs. They was cutting up. I guess Camille wasn't no thug on the scene. I don't know what, you know what? I don't know how Camille talks, how she dated thugs. We already realized, Camille, how could you have dated thugs? Now we know you don't even stay up late at night. Thugs don't even come out the house until midnight. Camille, how the hell did you date a thug? Camille don't dress. She don't slob the knob. Now we find out that Camille goes to bed early and she can't even stay up late at night when thugs don't even come out the house to midnight. Girl, I tell you, so many people been lying all season long about who they are. But I'm glad that Camille is finally resting in her true, who she really is. I think if Camille can just rest in who she authentically is, she can live a happy life. I think all this trying to be someone else, that's been the problem with her. But Michelle goes back and she starts talking again about how she didn't feel people were taking her seriously. And I keep telling Michelle through this mic, Michelle, you got to remember that the very beginning of this season, no one liked you, not even the cast members. We didn't like you as the audience, and neither did the cast members, because you were so horrible to David. So you got to remember that now that you're coming to us and you're starting to tell all these people about how trailer trash David, what he's been doing, they need a little bit of a minute, because what you're trying to ask them to do is quickly flip from hating you and liking David to all of a sudden to start hating David and liking you. That's a big ask, Michelle. That's a big ask. Michelle is so unaware of how people perceive her at the beginning of a relationship. And then she's kind of like, well, I don't understand why y'all didn't believe me when I was telling you. Why didn't anyone believe me? Because you didn't build up any capital. Nobody liked you. Michelle really needs to understand what a horrible, horrible, horrible first impression she makes. And maybe once she admits that her first impression is horrible, maybe she can actively do something to improve it, because now she's just dumbfounded over how people wouldn't necessarily be so quick to jump off of David's bandwagon and all of a sudden jump on her bandwagon. There's some people now, there's a lot of people who are on Michelle's bandwagon, but look how long it took for you to get there. And Michelle ought to take this as a learning experience. Look how long it took, Michelle, for people to like you, even a little bit. Like I said, I don't even really like you all the way because I still think you mean and evil. But look how long it took for people to like you even a little bit. Now you translate that to dating, and that's why you don't have no shot in dating, because it takes too long to like you. You need to become likable sooner, Michelle. Do whatever you need to do to become likable sooner. And then maybe the type of man you're looking for will come into your life, or they'll stay, because they probably all around you. It's just that they leave you and they cut and run. And the only people left are the people who probably want something from you. You see what I'm saying? When you don't have anything to offer and no one likes being in your presence, all the good people are going to flee you. Then what you're left with are the people who are going to be sticking around just trying to take advantage of you. That's why you think you got a lousy set of people to pick from, because the good people run from you quickly and the users hang on to you because they still looking for something they can use you from. Like I said, people, when you feel you're not attracting the right people, you need to think about, well, maybe I am attracting the right people, a mix of people, but I'm shooing away the good people and all the bad people are sticking to me like barnacles. Think about it, people. Think about it. Camille says she's ready to be a parent. They started asking her, what are you, Thomas, talking about? We know they had that deep conversation in the jacuzzi. And Keisha and I asked Camille, do you want to be a parent? And Camille said, yes, absolutely. No doubt about it. She says she believes she was put on this planet to be a mom. Fantastic, Camille. Now we realize she's been thinking she a mom since she was 10 years old. That's why she was bossing her brothers and sisters around. And that's why she came on this show, bossing Thomas around, trying to play out her destiny in life to be a mom. Well, Camille, wonderful. I love that you have a strong maternal instinct, but you're using it on the wrong people. And you don't need to be Thomas's mother. So you need to find a way to have your babies and be their mama, but don't be Thomas's mother, because he's a grown ass man and he don't need a mama. I know his mama put him up for adoption, but he don't need you to come in and fill that role no more. Nope, Camille, figure out a way to be showing up in people's lives differently, as opposed to trying to show up in their lives as a mother. You're not everybody's mama, Camille. But I like the progress they're making. So did Keisha and I Pulliam. And even the astrologer said that she could see that Camille had a lot of mother energy around her. We saw it. Shoot, I ain't even no astrologist. We saw all the mother energy around Camille. The problem was she's trying to mother too many people. She's trying to mother people that don't need a mother. Just stick to mothering your own children, your own kids, Camille, and I think you'll be okay. And the astrologer picked up on the fact that Thomas wants to be a cycle breaker when it comes to parenthood. I know he does. I know he wants to break the cycle of his own biological mother, for sure. And they tried to ask Camille, well, do you see any good things in Thomas that you know will make him a great parent? And instead of Camille saying something off the bat that's great about Thomas, she said he's an overthinker. See, that's the part I don't like, Camille. Camille always think of something positive to say, Camille. When people say, can you say something nice about a person? Don't turn around and call them an overthinker, because that has like a negative connotation to it. The first thing that needs to come out your mouth is something positive. I mean, it took her a while. Eventually she came back and said, oh yeah, he's protective. But that was after she said all this other stuff about him. That's what I'm saying about Camille. I don't know what it is about Camille where she's got to point out the negative first, and then eventually she gets to the positive. That's where I feel like she's done all season long. In the beginning, all she did was point out the negative of Thomas. And now all of a sudden, now she's trying to concentrate more on the positive. But one more person, I can see why she had problems in dating. You see, because who you present first is who I experience. And if I'm a guy and I don't like my first experience with you, then I'm not going to stick around. So if Camille is the type of person that likes to point out the negative first, but eventually she gets to the positive, too late. All the good people are gone. The minute you started going down that line, talking about what's wrong with people, they were out. And so who's left, Camille? Probably the thugs that don't wake up and don't go out to 12 o'clock at night. That's why you was left with them. People really need to start looking at their own patterns and stop blaming and saying, why don't certain people come to my life? Maybe you ought to need to look at what you do to either not attract those people or even shoo those people away. You really got to look at it. But then they went back to Nancy Drew Michelle about how she was doing her investigative work with Madison when she confronted Madison and saying, were you with David? And she was like, oh no, was that message for you? Oh no, I don't think it was for me, right? It shouldn't be for me. And then she's giggling. Even the astrologer said that when you read Madison's body language and all that giggling, a lot of it points to how flattered Madison was. Madison was very flattered that there was a message that was sent, that she didn't know it was sent because she never got it. But the fact that David was thinking about her like that, she couldn't even show any hurt or pain for Michelle in that moment because what she was so flattered by the message was sent by David. She knew it was for her and she was flattered. That's why she was giggling and that's why she was blushing. I go back to tell you over and over again, Madison chased David. He was a sitting duck. He was a sitting duck sitting there in his corner in his trauma, waiting on a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman to come by and pick him. Y'all want to talk about pygmishas? Well, guess what? David is a pygmisha because he was sitting on the corner waiting for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman to pick him up because Michelle kicked him out the car, dumped him on the corner, and then Madison said, that's fine. I'm going to drive by David and I'm going to pick him up. And all Michelle had to do was come by and honk the horn. Honk, honk. Hey, you, the guy over there with the ponytail, the side ponytail. Why don't you get on in this car? I like you. And David was like, who? Me? Are you a blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman that wants me? And Madison said, yeah, I want you. Get on here and get in this car so we can go get some tacos. And David, with his belly flopping around, went over there and hopped right in that car with Madison, and they drove off into happy ever after land. And so Madison, in this moment, when she finds out there was a text message sent about I want to eat you up, she was flattered. And Michelle is looking there talking about, why are you so flattered? Because remember, all this time, Madison and Michelle have been talking. They've been confiding in each other all this time. They were the duo. Remember I told you Michelle's childhood trauma is she really wants to be this girl that lives a city life, the one that Madison always portrayed herself to be. So who do you think Michelle would confide in the most? Of course it's going to be Madison because that's who she admires the most. So she went right to the woman who ended up being her backstabber. There it is. Even when Michelle was confronting Madison, all those text messages, you remember that scene, and Madison tried to, delete all her messages from David, but there was a lot of evidence left. I tell you, this Michelle, the Nancy Drew for Michelle, she really went deep. We found out a little bit more information, y'all. We knew that we said let's check text messages and there were none for David. But Michelle pointed out in the episode that David's name was in the last call log. So she saw that. The second thing that we didn't see, that they didn't show us, that Michelle tells us, is Michelle went a step further. Nancy Drew went a step further and she told Madison, hey, go into your search bar and type in the name David. Because what Michelle said was, I want to see all the instances in your phone, in your text conversations where David's name is mentioned. And lo and behold, y'all, a whole slew of messages showed up where Madison has been talking to her girlfriends about David all through the messages. So although there were no more text messages to David, Madison has been talking about David to all her girlfriends. Like I said, Madison was the aggressor. She was the pursuer. Her daddy told us, her daddy told Allan, did you get an STD test? Did you get it? We all were offended. We thought they were trying to say that, we thought that he was trying to say that Allan might be the one that's sleeping around and needs an STD test. Lo and behold, that daddy was sending us a message, letting us know, no, my daughter is reckless. You better get yourself an STD test so you know for sure. I've already told you that Luffy been trying to send us messages from day one. Luffy came in humping the couch, humping legs, humping anything around. He was trying to send Allan a message that your wife is humping somebody. I mean, Luffy was like, how many ways do I have to tell you? I'm in her panties. I'm sniffing them. I'm tearing them apart. I told you this. I'm humping legs. I'm humping couches. I'm doing everything to try to tell you, Allan. Allan, you not getting none of the clues. We all missed it. And let me tell you what else a lot of people missed. We all missed that it wasn't David. It wasn't David who was the worst. The worst is Madison. Michelle tells us that this whole TextGate thing had been going on for weeks, y'all, for weeks. And she said all this time, Madison could have come clean because she was confiding in Madison about the text. And all this time, Madison doesn't come clean. I'm telling you, the liars, cheaters, and backstabbers. This astrologer tells us that if she had done David's chart sooner, she would have predicted that David was going to be a backstabber too, because she said he is a Gemini moon and Leo sun. I don't know nothing about what that means, but I do know that Geminis are supposedly two-headed, split personalities, and that's what we saw in David. I said it. Everything David told us about himself from the very beginning was not true. I even think that David lied to the producers about being a smoker, because I'm pretty sure that's a question on the survey. Do you smoke? And I bet David put no. And then on the first day he meets Michelle, he says, well, I do smoke, but I really don't smoke. You see, David does one thing, but says another thing about himself. He is a Gemini. He is a Gemini. But she also said that she could see how Madison and David have a lot of things in common, because she said that, and it's what I said, when you really run down David and Madison, I think they have a lot of things in common. The only way you could think now that they don't have things in common is if you're still believing who they said they were. If you keep believing Madison on who she says she is, you would say, oh, they don't have anything in common. But the minute you really get in touch with who Madison is and what she likes, you then would realize David is perfect for her. Perfect for her. And when even down to the point where she says, I get with these guys, but then they later on don't want to get married. They don't want to commit. Well, you remember David's history. David said he dated a woman on and off for 10 years. He never married her. You see? So even in this moment where Madison is hooking up with David, David never married that girl he was dating on and off for 10 years. He's not actually a committer. Now, this astrologer says she believes that a lot of what's going on with David and Madison is a lot of it sexual. She doesn't believe that's emotional. But this is where I differ from her a little bit, because what I believe about the two of them is that they actually heal each other's trauma. They actually heal each other's trauma. Like I said, I know what David wants. Now, could David still be susceptible to any blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman that drives by and honks the horn and tells him to get on in the car so they can go get some tacos? He could. But if Madison was chasing David as much as I think she was, and she continues to build him up and puff up his ego and make him think he's the best thing since sliced bread, I think he'll stay right there with her. But as the relationship goes on and Madison starts to uncover anything she doesn't like about David, the minute she starts talking about anything negative about David, he's going to be out. I mean, a light bulb just went back in my head, y'all. How many of you remember when David's family was around and they were talking about how to talk to David? I believe it was his brother that said, you really can't come with a lot of criticisms of David. His brother said it. that David doesn't take constructive criticism very well. Do y'all remember that? Which means that with David, you constantly have to feed his ego and stroke his ego. The minute you start telling him anything you don't like about him, he's going to be out. So Madison, you better keep it up. All that chasing you did for David in the very beginning, you better keep it up. All that backstabbing you did to go over to Michelle, hear her stories, learn about what David likes so you could become it. These two are chameleons. They better watch out. David better also watch out that Madison became just the woman that she found out David wanted. You see, is Michelle even presenting who she is? Because remember, she was going to Michelle to figure out what David wanted. I said from the very beginning that Madison was competitive. She likes all this competitive sport. She loves to compete. From the very beginning, Madison was competing with Michelle. When I tell you the backstabbing is long and deep, it's long and deep. Madison pursued David, and what she did was she learned about David through Michelle, and she used that information against Michelle. Now, we know Michelle didn't want him, but so what? What Madison then learned to do was to become everything that David wanted, because Michelle was telling her everything that David would say about her. So when David walks around saying, this was the woman asking about me, showing interest in me, he's basically saying Madison was hitting on every point. She was doing everything I wanted. Well, how would she know to do everything you wanted? You know how she knew to do everything you wanted? Because she was over there getting information from Michelle. We saw the scenes when Madison was even trying to coach Michelle on what to do. Madison is a cold piece of work, y'all. I'm telling you, any of you still thinking that David is the mastermind, that David is the worst of these three people between Michelle, David, and Madison, any of you still thinking that it's David, you ain't looking deep enough. Go another level deeper. Listen, I'm even deeper than Michelle, because Michelle still wants to pin it all on David. She ain't even gone deep enough because she doesn't want to admit that she got played. You see, Michelle wants to say she was vindicated by exposing David. But really, Michelle, you got played. You actually got played by Madison. It's even worse than you think. You not only got betrayed by David, you got played by Madison. Michelle tells the story of that when they were all out at the bar, David and Madison invited a friend. Now remember, Madison is texting all her friends about David. She's untold everybody, I'm in love with this man. This is the man I want. And remember, I told you that Madison used Carla as a diversion. So when Madison wanted to spend time with David at the bar, she would invite someone else as the wing person, and then she would slowly find her way to be along with David. So this wasn't David doing this. You don't hear of any instances where David invites any other guy out. Think about it. There's no instance between Allan, Madison, and David where you hear a story where David says, I invited Ike out. I invited Thomas out. I invited Juan out. You don't hear no stories of that. The only stories you ever hear are Madison, Allan, David, and then what happens is Madison invites one of the girls, Carla. We find out now, you know who else she invites? Her own girlfriends. You see, Madison was the one setting up all the rendezvous. Madison was the one waiting up late for David to come home late at night and then telling her girlfriends, hey, I need you to be my wing person. I need you to be my diversion, because what I'm going to tell Allan is I'm out with my girlfriend, but I'm really going to be going over there to get with David. So can you meet me at the bar so I can tell Allan I'm with David and you? You see, because the story is told that when they went out to the bar, Madison does what she always does. Once she gets to the bar and Allan goes home and anyone else is ready to go home, she then goes off with David. You hear the same story all the time. Madison was always finding reasons to go out with David. Think about the story of the lost phone. Whose story was that? That was Madison's story if her phone was lost. That wasn't David's story. Think about all the fights that Madison would create with Allan at home, get mad and say, I need to go out for a breath of fresh air. Think of all the deliberate, sneaky stuff that Madison was doing to create moments with David. David wasn't doing none of this. He wasn't doing none of this. He didn't bring nobody in it. The one person David tried to bring into it was his cousin Denise. And his cousin Denise said, hell no, I'm not covering for you. But not Madison. Madison used Carla. Madison used her friends, and her friends were willing to do it for her, which tells me her friends have seen it before. They know the MO of Madison. Remember, Madison told us that people at her work talk nasty about her, that she slept her way to the top. And she acts like, I don't know why anybody tells me this. Now we know. Remember, Madison was the one that told us that guys have told her, I guess I could act like you too if I had daddy's money over here. She got a lot of men that think she's trash. Okay? It's Madison. Hey, you know what? Me and Michelle need to hook up. Me, Michelle, and Luffy need to hook up because I'm telling you, Madison is the real villain of this entire season, hands down. There really ain't even no competition, y'all, at this point. There is no competition between the biggest villain. Madison has won, hands down. In the second half of the after party, we get to MM and Juan are now the ones on the after party. And even Juan reveals to us the backstabbing ways of David. The backstabbing ways of David. Well, there you go. He said that David was the one always hanging out with Allan. They were the closest. Allan would confide in David. And then David also used that same information. That's why Allan was even having a harder time believing Michelle, because he was dealing with two things. He was dealing not only with the thought that his wife was having an affair, he was dealing with that the affair was with the guy that he confided in the most and trusted the most out of all the men. Horrible, 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 horrible. And when they were playing that little game and they were like, who's most likely to cheat? And Juan put up the sign that said David. Keisha Knight Pulliam said, Juan, why did you put David's name up? And Juan said, I don't really know. He said, I don't really know why I chose David. Maybe it was my intuition. No, it was Carla's intuition, Juan. You know, all of a sudden this after party, Juan is over here talking about energy. He's over here talking about intuition. He's talking about getting in touch with his inner soul and his inner thoughts. And he's really stealing a page out of Carla's book. I keep going over and telling you that where Carla is, that's where Juan needs to go. Carla is the healed version of Juan. Juan is not healed. You know, someone wrote down in my comments that what Juan suffers from is toxic positivity. And I latched on to it. It's so true. I don't even know if it's a real term, but they told me it was a term, and so I'm going to use it. Toxic positivity. Toxic positivity, in my mind, I'm interpreting of, you just want to believe the positive, even if it's toxic, even if it's wrong. Because what you really want, this is where I'm going to get to the trauma, you really don't want to confront the truth because the truth is too painful for you. It goes back to when Juan told us the story that the reason why his parents sent him away to live with his aunt was because there was a maid who was trying to kidnap him. And I was like, Juan, that's not true. Why would you believe that story? You told us, first of all, you told us y'all was dirt poor. So how the heck did your parents even afford a maid if you're telling us y'all was poor in Colombia? How did they afford a maid? Second of all, I'm going to tell you right now, your parents didn't send you to your aunt because she was trying to kidnap you. She sent you to your aunt because they probably couldn't afford to feed you and take care of you. And then with Juan, he don't want to really believe the truth. So he just wants to hang on to toxic positivity. Let's just keep being positive. And that's all he kept telling Carla all season long. I just want to be happy, sing, dance, do whatever I need to do to avoid the truth. He didn't even want to avoid the truth that's going on between David and Madison and Michelle. He didn't want to confront the truth. Remember when MM was going through it with Ike at the table, that dinner table, when Ike came and made a fool? Who was the person trying to bring in positivity, even though Ike was a doggone fool? It was Juan. He's always trying to cover up emotions that are painful. There's nothing wrong with confronting painful moments in your life. And then when you had Allan here in his moment confronting the situation that happened in, who was the one over there telling him to push down your emotions? Don't let it out. Don't. It was Juan. Juan is toxic positivity. I'm latching on to it because he's always talking about how he just wants to be positive and he wants to have a good time, but it's at the expense of confronting the truth. You're not healed. Juan tells us that he's been through some therapy and he's done some things. And I don't know if that's where the therapist told him, just think positively. But he needs to go find another therapist because all Juan is doing is spraying perfume over a funky body. No, Juan, you actually need to open up all those wounds. Remember when he wrote that letter to himself, his 6-month-old self, and we're like, 6 months? Because that's where his real pain was. You see, we were asking, why are you going back to 6 months? Because that's where his real pain started. And that's why he was out of sorts and he was crying. And a lot of you thought that Carla was not being sensitive because she just sat there and listened to him. And I told you back then, that's really what she needed to do because Juan needs to feel the pain so he can heal from the pain. But what Juan does is he runs around with all his toxic positivity, trying to cover up not only his pain, he tries to cover up everybody's pain. So when he sits here and talks about, maybe it was my intuition, I was like, are you finally starting to get in touch with your insides, Juan, after you spent 8 weeks with Carla? Because another thing he said, you know what I thought about? I thought about that when Allan was cooking those fish or shrimp tacos, whatever he was cooking for us, we ate all his energy. What? What are you talking about, Juan? Energy. You just sat on here all season long talking about Carla talks too much about energy and chakra and all this other kind of stuff. And now what you're doing is when we're sitting here talking about a serious moment, he says, oh, I thought of something funny, but maybe it's not so funny. And that is when Allan was cooking those tacos and we were eating all his food, he had a lot of toxic energy in him because he was dealing with all this stuff with Madison, and we basically ate all his bad energy. What are you talking about, Juan? All of a sudden now you are believing in this? Juan irritates me. He really, really irritates me because he is so unhealed and he is so unaware. But what he's doing with his unhealedness and his unawareness is he's actually gaslighting other people, because what he's doing is he doesn't want to confront his own pain. So when you're confronting your pain, he tells you he don't like it about you. He don't like Carla going deep. He didn't like Allan going deep. He didn't like when MM was getting in her feelings. He didn't like none of it because he don't want it to come out in him. That's toxic positivity, and it's also a form of gaslighting. It really is. But he said that Allan is one of the most loyal people around, and that he was just shocked that David would do this to him because it was the two of them who talked the most and who hung out the most. And all this time, David was hanging out with Allan so he could backstab him. Once again, Allan found himself being pulled in two different directions. Remember, that's Allan's trauma, being caught between his mom and his dad. And now you hear Allan here caught between Madison and David. You have David pulling him as a friend, because that's why he thought he was a friend. And you have Madison over here pulling him as his wife. And here he is in the middle, where neither parties are thinking about what's best for him or thinking about him. If you go back to Allan's trauma, he always said that he didn't have a voice, that people were making decisions for him, his parents, but he didn't have a voice. His parents fought over him. And now you have Allan in the middle between Madison and David, and the two of them are making decisions in this love affair that they're doing over the head of Allan. And Allan is in the middle with no decision making, no say so on what they're doing or how they're treating him. And he is the one that's hurt. It's horrible, horrible, horrible. And let me tell you, it's so horrible, it's triggering to his childhood. It's got to be. Once again, he's caught in the middle of two people that are not looking out for what's best for him. They're looking out for what's best for themselves, just like his mother and daddy did. It's sad to think about, y'all. It is really sad to think about. But like I said, your dog was trying to tell you, Allan, all along, you didn't want to see the truth. You didn't want to see the truth because you didn't want to have to make a choice. Maybe that's what happened when you were fighting between your mother and father. You didn't want to see the truth in your father or the truth in your mother, because then maybe you felt that would have made you have to confront it. And maybe you would have had to make a decision. Maybe in some ways they shielded you from the decision, but they also shielded you from the facts. Right? Because even when Michelle was coming here and trying to get you to see the truth, you didn't want to see it, Allan. You didn't want to see it. You buried your head a lot, Allan. I mean, the times your wife is going out and not coming back to 3 o'clock in the morning and you never suspected anyone. Forget about not suspecting David. You didn't suspect anyone. Most people, that's the first thing they would think. If your spouse is coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning, the first thing you're thinking about is they're cheating. That's what any normal person would do. No one believes that you're getting tacos at 3 o'clock in the morning. No one believes it, but Allan believed it. Why does Allan believe these stories? Even Loopy was acting a fool out here saying, wake up, man. I'm trying to show you. I'm humping the pillow. I'm humping the couch. I'm humping legs. I'm down in these panties. I'm going to the hamper, pulling the panties out, trying to get you to see it. But Allan is over here asleep on the couch at 3 o'clock in the morning, believing that people are eating tacos at 4 o'clock in the morning. Too much. Too much, Allan. Wake up. You got to figure out why you too don't want to confront things that are right in front of you. Right in front of you. But let me tell you another eye-opening moment that made me not like Juan even more, was because they have this little segment on the after party. It's called the do-over. Well, if you could do something over differently, what would you do? And in the do-over segment, they asked Juan about what do you think David could have done differently in this situation. And let me tell you what Juan came up with. Juan came up with some more of this toxic positivity, putting positive spins on shit. Juan tells the story that he too was in a similar situation where he had a friend that was dating a woman. But Juan became attracted to his friend's girl. Listen to what I just said. Juan had a friend who was dating a woman, and Juan became attracted to his friend's woman. What does Juan's toxic positivity say to him? Instead of saying, that's foul, that you over here lusting after your friend's girl, what Juan said was, I did the right thing. What do you mean? What was the right thing? You went away and just left it alone? No, Juan says, I went to my friend and told my friend, hey, would you mind if I pursued her because I really like her? What? So wait a minute, Juan, you bringing this up as a positive moment? This is supposed to be the do-over segment. What would you do right? And you're telling me that the do-over part, you're bringing up a scenario where you lusted after your friend's girl and you went to your friend. And what he's saying is, it wasn't like he and the friend and the girl had broken up. No, the friend and the girl are together and he liked the girl and he went over to his friend and said, I want to be with your woman. Is it okay? Woo, woo, woo. And he presented this to us as if this was a good thing to do. Toxic positivity, because he don't want to confront negative stuff. That's negative, Juan. That's horrible. What a horrible example. I mean to tell you, when he said that example in front of these three women, Keisha Knight Pulliam, MN was there. They all looked at him like he was crazy, but he didn't even realize he sounded like a fool. He sounded like a damn fool. And what he said was the reason why his experience was so much better was because he kept his integrity. He said, keep your integrity. Life goes on, it gets better. He said, thank God he's been blessed with some coaching and some therapy. Get your money back. I don't know what coach, what therapy you're going to on, but get your money back because, or you need to go back for some additional sessions because you're not healed. You far from healed, one. You got a whole lot of work to do. And he says, everybody just needs to be joyful and happy and cover up all the shit in the world and don't confront it. Just put some toxic positivity on top of it. What a mess, y'all. What a mess. But like I said, I've come to my conclusion. I have wrapped up my investigation and I have determined that Madison is the biggest villain of all this season. So I need y'all to let me know. Who do you think is the biggest villain? Do you think it's Michelle? Do you think it's Madison? Or do you think that it is David? Because I done told y'all who I think. But that's it. Don't forget to like my video. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to leave a comment down below. And I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.